This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Fiscally responsible, financial geniuses, monetary magicians. These are things people say about drivers who switch their car insurance to Progressive and save hundreds. Visit progressive.com to see if you could save. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary, not available in all states or situations.
Today on CityCast DC, the big Commanders Stadium news, and some serious changes coming to Metro, and a podcaster who reads DC menus to help put you to sleep. We're going to talk about it all, and we promise not to put you to sleep. Plus, there's a special members-only fourth segment about the state of play at the Kennedy Center, where it's getting weird. I'm here with WAMU's Alex Coma and my CityCast colleague, Julia Caron. Today is Friday, April 18th. I'm Michael Schaefer, and here's what DC's talking about. Hey, Alex.
Hey.
Hey, Julia.
Hey, Mike.
So, Alex, you have been covering, as a lot of the other local media have, the news at RFK Stadium. There was news this week that a group of people is going to lead is going to try to get a ballot initiative put on the ballot to forbid that space from being used as a stadium. And that was going to be a big subject for us to talk about until Wednesday night, when a friend of CityCast, Mark Seagraves, reported that they are tantalizingly close to a stadium deal. What's the deal and what does it look like?
Yeah, well, obviously we're still figuring out the details, as I think the city and the Commanders are. It's worth stressing that this is not finalized, but, both in my reporting and in Seagraves' telling of things, the general idea is that they've at least, assembled a term sheet. They've worked out a preliminary deal where the idea would be that the Commanders would put up something like $2.5 billion to build a new stadium at the RFK stadium site. And then the city would come in and sort of fill in. I think the number is floating around $850 million, although that, I understand, is still a little bit fluid, with the idea being that the city would be, as Mayor Muriel Bowser has promised all along in her pursuit of a stadium at the RFK site, that the city would be improving the land, would not necessarily be contributing money directly towards the construction of a stadium, but would rather be making that 180 acres on which the old RFK sits, more hospitable for both a stadium and a whole host of new development around it. Now, we still don't really know what that's going to look like, but now we at least know that all of the rumors are true and that the city is indeed, on the precipice of bringing the Commanders back into the district.
So they're talking about it being a stadium there, retail there, a sportsplex for district residents. I don't know what that means. And housing. Do we know, how much housing? What exactly do we know about this so far?
Yeah, I mean, this is a real open question because Bowser's line on this has always been, we can do it all at RFK. And of course, you hear 180 acres and you think, wow, that really is a lot of space. But then you start thinking about a stadium requires at least some parking, even if the city is not super keen on the idea of having a bunch of cars flow down into that area of town. So, it's going to be necessarily that there are some trade-offs here because the team and the city very much wants new housing. This is the new model for sports stadiums. The team is in position to become a master developer of the site, which means that they would stand to benefit financially from the construction of anything around there. And, it's good for them. There are people living nearby. It's mixed use. It feels vibrant. But the question is, will that be able to fit alongside the stadium? And there's, some pretty severe restrictions on how much of that land can be developed. The feds used to control this site. In fact, they do still technically control it. They're just giving DC the chance to redevelop it. And one of their conditions is that a decent amount of the land, especially close to the Anacostia River, has to remain as open space and parkland. That's going to limit how much development is possible on the site. So the city certainly has an interest in adding new housing, especially in a rapidly redeveloping area of the city like Hill East, where this is located, but we still really don't know how much will be possible there.
Yeah, so I have a couple of questions regarding this. Obviously, like RFK, the whole draw of it is like it's the spiritual home of the commanders. And with that spiritual home comes, I imagine, tailgating, which you can't do without parking lots. I imagine that people who want homes there are not thrilled that like potential area for apartments or condos or whatever are thinking like this could just be one big parking lot on game days. Have residents said anything about that?
Oh, yeah. I mean, anybody living nearby is not thrilled about the idea in Kingman Park. I can tell you that. But, in general, the mayor's approach here has been to say, look, we're not going to have large surface parking lots. To the extent that we do have parking, it will likely largely be underground. And that's all well and good. But as you observe, the culture around an NFL stadium does kind of require large surface lots in a way that, setting up the grill in a parking lot or a parking garage just really doesn't capture the same magic. And it's worth saying that the NFL has, requirements for when it, sees a new stadium constructed. It wants to see X amount of parking. There might be some wiggle room, especially because my understanding is that Roger Goodell, the NFL commissioner, is like personally involved in many of these discussions. I understand he's been trying to push things along because he very badly does not want to see this newly ascendant franchise still forcing its fans to commute to Landover, Maryland. So maybe he can bend some of those rules. But I mean, yeah, there's going to be a lot of parking and it's an open question where and how much.
Wait, Matt, can we talk about the money? This happens, on a week when the mayor of D.C. has announced some pretty drastic plans for budget cuts. They're kind of begging Congress to let them spend their own money. It's a sort of humiliating situation, but it also shows how kind of perilous the finances are for what was, until quite recently, a pretty fiscally healthy city. So it looks like this deal is structured in such a way as to make it look like the taxpayers are not on the hook for very much at all. And insofar as they are going to be on the hook, it's going to happen well down the line, i.e. after the law is they have to balance budgets for a few years going forward, but after that is when they'd be on the hook. Is that an optical illusion? Is that actually the case? What do you, again, knowing what you know, what are we to make of this?
Yeah, so you're right in that some of this is indeed, this is a budget trick. The city, sets its balanced budget over the course of 5 years. About $350 million that we're talking about here is set to kick in 2032. I've been told pretty directly that was a move to make sure that this budget can still be balanced. Because as you alluded to, your listeners are probably sick of hearing about DC's budget problems, not only with Congress, but also with the loss of the federal workforce. So coming into this budget, we knew things were going to be quite tough. And yet all of us reporters were persistently hearing rumors that the mayor would still try and include something for RFK in this budget. This is making it clear that she intends to, even with all of the uncertainty that we've learned about in the last few months. The $500 million that is set to be included in this budget is going to be stretched over the course of the next 4 years or so, or I guess 5 fiscal years. And so that we're still really waiting to see when the mayor presents her budget, what source it's going to come from. There have been a variety of ideas batted around, one of which being that, there was a tax on large businesses established to pay for Nationals Park. Nationals Park is very nearly paid off. The city, 100% funded that one via taxes, a variety of different businesses. And so some thought was, well, maybe the city just pulls that money away. I've heard that idea is sort of fallen out of favor, but I mean, that leaves a very real question about where indeed that $500 million will come from. The other $350 million that's coming in 2032, I understand, is structured in something called a tax increment financing district. That is a very popular method of paying for these big publicly backed developments, where essentially the city takes the tax money that what the developer would be paying under ordinary circumstances and borrows against that to sort of facilitate the development up front and then are gradually paid back. So that is like less of a direct hit for the taxpayers. It certainly requires the city to, rely on its borrowing power, and that affects the city's credit. But that $500 million, where that's coming from, I see no way that it's not taxes of some kind.
Let's take the Bowser administration at their word for a minute. I've talked to people in the administration. They really believe this is a great boon economically for the city. What is the case for that?
Well, anyone in the Bowser administration just points down the road at Nationals Park. They say, yeah, your sports economists have all their fancy schmancy evidence, but look, we built a new neighborhood out of scratch because we chose to stand 100% behind Nats Park. It completely spurred redevelopment in that section of the city. I think that even skeptics would tell you that has been a pretty unqualified success. That Navy Yard has changed for a variety of reasons, but I think it's hard to deny that Nats Park was a driving force catalyzing the new development down there. Same goes for Audi Field, which is nearby. Their whole argument is, look, we've already done it. We've already done it nearby. We know it can work. We are not going to be putting in 100% of the dollars this time as they were over with the Nationals. So to them, it feels obvious. And, it remains to be said that this is a political calculation for the mayor as well. Many people have told me this is the last unchecked box on her to-do list. She's been in office for 10 years, and this is the one thing she's always wanted to do is bring the Commanders back into D.C.
So we had one of those sports economists on our show, J.C. Bradbury. And when he was talking to us, he said basically that, when it came to Nationals Park, there was no, explicit study that said, Nationals Park was inherently the driver of this thing. And I imagine the people who are behind this ballot initiative, they look at Nats Park and they're like, that's all nice and good. And we love having a baseball team and a soccer team out there. But really, we want to only have housing out there. What is this ballot initiative that's trying to get off the ground? Who's behind it? What's happening?
Yeah, this is run by Adam Eininger, who is basically been behind every successful ballot initiative in DC over the last 20 years or so. If you decriminalize marijuana or to the increase of the tip minimum wage, or perhaps someday the imposition of ranked choice voting in local elections. He's worked on all of these. And so, it might seem, like a bunch of, cranks, that are trying to block what is otherwise a popular stadium. But these people are serious. They know what they're doing. That's not to say they'll succeed, but they know how to get a ballot initiative on the ballot and how to organize around passing it.
And it's interesting that there's sort of two questions. One is how, should the city pay for a stadium? How should it happen? That gets kind of wonky. And then the other is this sort of basics question that I think this ballot initiative is about, which is should there be a stadium at all? Or should, in a very expensive city, should that all be turned over to housing? And I guess they would say there's plenty of DC neighborhoods that have turned themselves around without a stadium.
Yeah, and you've drawn out exactly the tension that the ballot initiative organizers are facing. They would much rather put a question on the ballot that says no public money for a stadium because, frankly, that's a much easier sell to a skeptical public than should there be a stadium at all. But as we learned with Initiative 83, ballot initiatives can't direct the government to spend money. So they are stuck in more of a difficult position of saying, well, we want to change the zoning to prohibit a stadium because there is no stadium without public money. That argument is correct. The city will almost certainly put in public money if it wants a stadium at RFK, but that nuance is harder to communicate versus simply, do you want your tax dollars to go to a stadium? That's a political winner, whereas the other side, I'm not so sure.
Obviously, we've got a bit of a budget showdown in the meantime between Mayor Bowser and Congress. Even if this does happen, and she has these rosy projections of 2030, which feel ambitious, do the feds have to approve this? And could this actually get done by 2030? Or are we going to be in environmental studies until 2045, 2050? What are you forecasting here?
I was talking with someone about this yesterday because I too share that skepticism, right? Think about any city project that gets mired in permit delays. But what they told me was when the city wants something to happen, it can happen. They built the convention center in a little over 2 years. They built Capital One back when it was still MCI in a little over 2 years. When people are committed to making heaven and earth, as this administration has shown over and over again that it is very committed to doing, they can make this happen. That being said, this deal needs to be approved by the DC Council. We haven't mentioned them at all, but they are, of course, an important part to play here. And many council members have come out and said, I support a stadium, but not with the use of public money. And I think they kind of all knew that eventually the mayor was going to present them a proposal that had some public money. So here you go. There's probably $500 million, another $350 that is definitely taking advantage of the public credit. What are they going to do? How long are the negotiations going to go? Will they fold in the face of public opinion that seems very clearly on the side of bringing the Commanders back, taxpayer consequences be damned. That could drag things out, especially, as you say, considering that they are going to, while being asked to approve new money for the stadium, also make cuts to very popular programs. I've heard the mayor plans to cut all manner of popular things, up to and including, payments for daycare workers, additional healthcare supports for people without Medicaid, So you're making bad cuts on the one hand and being asked to fund a stadium on another. How does that read to your constituents? I don't know.
Are you ready to add a little je ne sais quoi to your spring? The Alliance Française of Washington, D.C. is here to help you embrace all things French. The Alliance Française of Washington, D.C. offers language courses tailored to every level. Late spring sessions start on May 3rd. So if you've ever dreamed of ordering your morning café in perfect French or discussing art and history with ease, now's your chance. But it's not just about the language courses. A membership with the Alliance Française of Washington, D.C. brings you into a vibrant community that celebrates all things French. You get exclusive access to cultural events, wine tastings, film screenings, and more. Visit www.francedc.org to start your journey.
Hi, I'm David Plotz, the CEO of CityCast. We've all set health goals: lose weight, exercise more, eat better. But without a plan, those goals often fade. That may have happened to you. It has definitely happened to me. And that's where Prolon comes in. Prolon's 5-day fasting mimicking diet gives you a science-backed, structured approach to stay on track and see real results. And now Prolon is upping their game with the new next-gen 5-day program, delivering the same science-backed benefits in a cleaner, more convenient, and more flavorful format. Prolon is a plant-based nutrition program featuring soups, snacks, and beverages designed to nourish the body while keeping it in a fasting state, triggering cellular rejuvenation and renewal. Next-Gen builds on the original Prolon with 100% organic soups and teas, a richer taste, and ready-to-eat meals. Developed over decades at USC's Longevity Institute and backed by top U.S. medical centers, Prolon has been shown to support biological age reduction, metabolic health, skin appearance, fat loss, and energy. I've been doing the 5-day program, and I feel so much better. I really enjoy the tasty energy bars, the snacks and soups, and the fact that I can enjoy meals, even though the calorie count is super low. The flavors and textures are excellent. An olive oil snack here, broccoli and quinoa soup there, hibiscus tea, a yummy nut bar. It's got the benefits of a 5-day fast, but doesn't have the challenge of doing it with pure liquids. It's a system reset. And also, I know this sounds funny, but it's not. The packaging and directions are fantastic, clear, and well organized and thoughtful. For a limited time, you can be first in line to experience the new Next Gen at special savings. Prolon is offering CityCast listeners 15% off site-wide, plus a $40 bonus gift when you subscribe to their 5-day program. Just visit prolonlife.com/city. That's PROLONLIFE.com/city to claim your 15% discount and your bonus gift. prolonlife.com/city.
I have, for the last 14 years, lived in D.C. on the L2 bus line. But I learned this week, we've talked about this before on CityCast, I just hadn't focused on when it's happening. I learned this week that as of June, just 2 months from now, I'm going to be living on something called the D70 bus line. It goes basically the same place. But what is happening, for people who haven't listened to every single CityCast episode ever, is that there's a huge bus remapping project that's gone on. It's supposed to make the bus routes rational and then make sense, particularly to newcomers who often, when you move to a new city, it often takes a while to figure out all the bus routes. So buses in DC will either be D or C, and then a number, D for downtown, C for crosstown. Buses in Montgomery County will be M, and Prince George's County will be P, et cetera, et cetera. And they've spent a long time studying which routes go where and what works. So there's also some tweaks to the actual routes. My knowledge of bus routes was something I was really proud of. Like as a young child, and I will preface this all, I guess I probably don't need to, by saying I was not a cool young child. But as a young child, I knew where all the buses went. And now I'm like a yokel. I don't know anything. There's also going to eliminate a number of bus stops, ones that are bunched very close to other bus stops. This is supposed to make the buses move faster and more efficiently. But I predict massive confusion on June 29th, despite all the efforts they've made to educate the public about this.
I have a friend actually whose bus line, not line, but her stop got completely eliminated in this plan. And she is not a Randy Clark fan because of this, because she lives near Benning Road, that area, and liked having the bus that basically went across, I believe it was the river, to get her to like that 8th Street corridor area near Union Station, something like that. And so having that eliminated has made her big mad and big angry and not a Randy Clark fan.
But they say that any stop that was eliminated is within 600 feet of another stop.
Supposedly, but I don't know that that's true. She said it's further.
Also, like, I don't know, when there's like a stop literally on our corner, and when we got our house, it was like, I'm not saying that's why we got the house or anything, but it was like a really nice fringe benefit, you know?
Yes. No, I also am an L2 rider, an old L2 rider, I guess.
We're
now
an
that
L2 rider.
Excuse me. Now it's D70. My bad. And my big thing with the L2 was, in theory, this is a great route because it goes right down Connecticut Avenue. It should zoom past all the traffic and all that, but it doesn't, because basically every block it stops. And so now my question is, all right, if they're going to eliminate the stop, I live near Ordway Street. Do they eliminate that stop? Do they eliminate something near, I don't know, Porter Street? Like, when they are eliminating these stops, what's the calculus? Is it like this particular block is just more popular? Do we know what the deal was with that?
They say they have based this on data and how many people get on and off at that particular stop. I predict that there will be a number of news stories, perhaps done by Alex Coma himself, about seniors who are suddenly forced to walk what if to them is a very inconvenient distance, or slip on ice, or otherwise not live their best lives en route to the bus. And that these stories will in turn create some political pressure on the system. We'll see what happens.
Or perhaps people who are just mad that the X2, you know, the most iconic of our bus names in DC is going away. I mean, you know, there are Twitter accounts. I remember, I think there still are, that talk about like scenes from the X2 or something like that. It doesn't have the same rhythm otherwise.
It's like when you get a new area code and you're like humiliated. There's actually a whole bunch of Metro news this week. They approved a budget, which, you know, there's been the usual cycle of this is not sustainable. We need real money that we can count on every year instead of having a tin cup around. And on the trains, they have been working in this automated train system. There's still a conductor on board, but the trains run themselves. But it has, in like 3 cases out of 10,000, overshot where it's supposed to stop. The Metro says, look, it didn't overshoot like red signals or anything. It was just sort of where on the platform it was supposed to stop. But this has caused safety authorities to say, you guys are not ready for prime time just yet. And biggest change of all for train riders, at least, is that they are going back to pre-pandemic opening and closing hours on weekends.
Let's go, baby.
What are those hours?
Those hours are going to open on weekends 1 hour earlier at 6 a.m. So nice and early. That's Saturdays and Sundays. The system closes an hour later on Fridays and Saturdays at 2 a.m. Guys, we are so back. We are so back.
Wait, can I ask you guys, when you go out to like bars and, not to like a game or something, but to like, a night on the town, dinner with somebody, whatever, do you take the Metro?
Oh, yeah. I mean, and I definitely will now that it's actually going to stay open and not strand me wherever I'm going.
That's correct. Yeah, I basically do the math of like, okay, if I'm going out and I'm having like a drink with a friend, or I'm seeing a friend like somewhere where like it's actually faster to just use my car, then maybe I'll be like, okay, like I, limit how much I drink. I have like a drink and mostly eat food, and I drive there. For the most part, back in my younger days, like, yeah, I metroed everywhere because it was just like, all right, I can like wait 20 minutes for this later thing to come around, and I want to drink more drinks, and I don't want to hurt anybody, and we don't like drunk driving, so made it easier in that respect for sure.
I had figured that the biggest beneficiaries were likely to be workers who are like actually coming back from jobs, and I think a lot of people when they go out to eat think, well, it's a special night, I'll splurge on an Uber.
Well, that's the reason why it was at 3 a.m. for all those years to begin with, is because it was meant to be catching all the workers staying past last call. You know, this was like a huge part of the debate as Paul Wiedefeld was scaling back Metro's hours in order to make safety improvements. And I think Randy Clark is being really smart about, like, look how excited we are to talk about it. Like, even though the system is facing fiscal peril, it should be said, he knows that giving people what they want and showing them, look, this is what you could have if only you would fund Metro. Because, of course, he still needs to get all of the localities around the region to come together on some sort of sustainable funding solution. Because look, with all the DC budget problems we were just talking about, just last year, DC increased their contribution to Metro. There's some real question whether they can keep that up. And that's to say nothing of moving forward, where there are all these discussions. Is there a regional tax that would fund Metro going forward? I mean, look, they're still in serious trouble. So I'm a little surprised, frankly, that they're still expanding their hours. And as you say, reorganizing the bus network. They have a big, ambitious plan to, even beyond these stop consolidations, to totally, reform what they do with buses, but they don't have the money to do it. So I think he's making a calculation. If you make it good enough, people will want to pay to keep the good service going. And yeah, as someone who very much doesn't want to be stranded in Arlington if they go see their friends there, making their way back to the city on a Friday night, then yeah, I'm all for it. But it's going to take money to keep this up.
So if you want to find out what your bus line is going to do and whether your stop is going to be eliminated, look at our show notes. We have a link to this shiny new map that Randy Clark is apparently using to excite everybody.
RIP the X2, baby.
So, Julia, you were obsessed this week with something a friend of CityCast, Jessica Sidman, had flagged about a podcast called Pepperoni Pizza Dreams, Food Whispers for Sleep. What is Pepperoni Pizza Dreams?
Okay, so this is an ASMR podcast, basically. I don't know if any of you listen to ASMR when you try to go to bed. It's basically people whispering a lot like this in a very soothing voice so that you get to go to bed. And they'll like tap on a thing. So like, here's my coffee cup. They'll tap like this, like something like that.
I do not already.
Listen. You're already asleep. I don't listen to ASMR when I go to bed, but Jessica Sidman pointed out that this podcast, Pepperoni Pizza Dreams, Food Whispers for Sleep, has 24 episodes. Recently, the narrator did one all about museum food in DC. So we are on the map in terms of ASMR, headed to sleep, museum stuff. The places that were featured were Immigrant Food at Planet Word, the Bread First Cafe at the Phillips Collection, and Mitsatam Cafe at the Smithsonian's National Museum of the American Indian. And I just want you guys to listen to what this sounds like and give it a rating really quickly.
Belgian fries, seasoned to perfection, served with garlic aioli, add white truffle oil.
So what is your guys' rating of this episode or this segment, Museum Munchies, Washington, D.C.? Would you fall asleep to it? Do you not want to?
It makes me neither sleepy nor hungry.
Okay. Alex, your thoughts, feelings?
I've always found ASMR very creepy, and this is no exception. But I mean, like, Godspeed, anything that gets you to sleep, somehow. No, for me, this would give me nightmares.
I know people who like love this stuff and require it to fall asleep.
Mm-hmm.
Like they find it super soothing. And the idea of like reading off like, at Bread First, you can order a granola cookie, a croissant. Like that to me just feels like very, I don't know, weird, interesting. I think for some people they'll really like it. But for me, I don't know. To be fair, I like fall asleep watching YouTube videos like an idiot. Like a true millennial. I don't know. Alex, how do you fall asleep? Mike, how do you fall asleep typically?
Drugs.
Fair. Same.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like we're getting too complicated when melatonin is really just sitting right there if you're having that much trouble. I mean, I just don't want to think about food, right? Like, that makes me excited for the next day. You know, I'm not ready to like fall asleep thinking about, like, Bread First is delicious, but like that doesn't mean that I need to be thinking about it around midnight. That's for 12 hours from now.
Also, we can stipulate that menus can be pretty boring and some of them can be pretty pretentious. But like, there's plenty of boring stuff to read in the topography of Washington, D.C.
Give me that continuing resolution that Congress is passing or attempting to pass. Let me tell you, I would fall right asleep, which is probably what the House did anyways.
What I'm hearing is that CityCast needs to expand in the ASMR space because I've got some DC budget documents that'll knock you right out. No menus needed.
Alex, you're always welcome to come read those.
Let's do it.
I can't wait.
And everybody, thank you for listening to CityCast DC. Today, paid subscribers get a bonus 4th roundup chat about all the recent Kennedy Center news. If you want to be sure you always get the full episode, become a member. Head to membership.citycast.fm and sign up. It's only $8 a month, and members get ad-free listening, exclusive members events, and an extra events newsletter every week. And that is all for today here on CityCast DC. Our production team this week was Priyanka Tilve, Julia Karen, and Ash Durbin. Newsletter editor Kayla Cote-Semmerman wrote our fabulous newsletter, Hey DC, this week. And our hosts are Bridget Todd and me, Michael Schaefer from Politico. Music is by Alex Roldan, with additional music from Philip Ayers, Wendy Marcini, and Abbas Premji from Triple Scoop Music via Getty Images. If you enjoyed the show, why not tell everyone about it on your new bus, which might be the same as your old bus. We'll be back Monday morning with more news from around the city. Bye.